So I'm Amy Milne. I'm the executive director of the QuiltAlliance, which is a nonprofit. And I'm here in Morganton, North Carolina, my hometown and yours, on January 21st, 2023. And it is Thelma Luciana's 90th birthday. And I had the joy of interviewing her for the Quilters SOS Save Our Stories project. It's an oral history project, and you have so generously agreed to be interviewed, and we're in front of your gorgeous quilt, and we just had a tour of well, not all of your quilts, but many of your quilts and some family quilts, and I just want to thank you for doing this interview. Yeah, and thank your daughter Linda for setting it up. So I want to start by asking you about the quilt that you chose to hang, and it's right behind us, and everyone listening to this interview will see photos of it, you know, and be able to see the details. But tell me about it.
Well, it just took my fancy because this girl at the bottom was dreaming about all these fairies, and each one of them had a name, and it had a story, the Thistledown Fairies. And I put the story on the back of the quilt and had a good time picking the fabrics to go in the quilt. So it was an unusual one, but I liked it, so thought I would share it with you.
So it's completely your design. You designed the quilt. It's not
I
a
had
kit.
a pattern. I had a pattern.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And but you also, are any of these, they almost look hand-dyed, these fabrics.
Some
are they commercial or
some
they
were,
are?
Yeah. I usually use batiks. I like batiks because they have really bold colors.
Yeah.
So I mostly use batiks.
And this one right here that you can see through, is that like a organza or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was an old piece from my grandmother. I had a lot of old fabrics then, and they still were good.
Yeah.
So I used them.
And what year did you make this? Do you remember?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's on the label.
Yeah, we'll add it in.
But I don't.
We'll add that in so that folks know. But it's really contemporary looking.
Yeah.
I mean, it does not, it's something you could see in a quilt show or a quilt museum right now. Mm-hmm. You know, do you feel like it is, do you feel like you have a style that this fits in?
No, I just look at something and want to try something different.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time. I'm not into just doing blocks.
Yeah. So what about this? So this is kind of a narrative, you know, there's a story behind how you designed it. Are you someone who doesn't know you, tell a little bit about your background as a teacher and how maybe story and that kind of a background affects your quilting.
Well, I grew up we lived with my grandmother and granddad in Black Mountain, North Carolina, and it was during the Depression, and my grandmother quilted and my mother also quilted, and they influenced me a lot with wanting to do it. So I would inherit a lot of scraps from my grandmother from her sewing, so I would always try to do things. And when I was there, I made 2 complete quilts before I graduated from high school. Yeah, so I was really into it. But then after I graduated, I went to college and was out a while, but I've always loved it.
And this quilt you still have, and you still have a lot of your quilts, but Linda, your daughter, has said that she also has a lot of your quilts. Do you give them away, or do you keep them?
I'm very selfish with my quilts. I put so much work in them, I can't let them go.
I like that.
Yeah, they're just personal. and they're different, each one.
And you have a large collection of family quilts.
I do.
Yeah. And those were very traditional of the time.
Yes.
And you grew up during the Depression, so those were necessity quilts, utility quilts.
Very heavy.
Yeah.
And my grandmother always shared them with neighbors that were in need. They were very giving people. So I always felt the love that they put in what they did.
Do you remember, you were telling me what the fabrics were that they used for the quilts were?
A lot of their feed for their chickens and things came in printed fabrics. So they used that. But mostly they used old clothing. They used old men's suits. I have some made with wool, and they just used what they had.
Right. What's the first memory you have of a quilt?
I guess it was when they would get together to quilt. They had a frame that they would put in and hang it from the ceiling in the house in Black Mountain. And I remember they would get together and quilt, and I would play underneath it. So that's my memory of quilting.
Do you remember sleeping under those quilts?
Yes, the bedrooms upstairs in the house were cold, and my mother would put so many on me that I could hardly turn on. And she would always take an old flat iron and heat it and wrap it in towels and put it in at my feet. And there I laid straight in the bed, couldn't turn over, but it was good.
Kept you in place all night. Do you remember any quilts that served as batting for other quilts? Or what was the batting they were using? Was it homegrown?
Sometimes they would use old worn out blankets and things they had. They didn't buy any.
And do you have memories of, you said there was a quilt frame hanging, was that like a community quilting or just family?
I don't know where it came from. Probably my grandfather made it.
Oh.
But I have it in my building, in my cabin. I have that old frame.
Did other people come over to quilt? Like other neighbors come over to quilt?
Yes, they would get together.
And you remember being under there. And at what point did you say, I want to try that, I want to do it?
Oh, all the time. I wanted to be with them and get their quilt.
Even as a little kid?
Yes.
And what was the first project you remember being involved with?
They started me on a butterfly quilt, which you would make a square. And since my grandmother sewed for people, she would have scraps, and I would cut different butterflies and applicate them to the square.
Now, when your grandmother and family members were making quilts, did they sign them or put any kind of a label of their name on it?
No, and I wish I knew where some of them came from.
Yeah.
I really would like to know.
So not even initials or anything?
No.
Wow.
But they had fancy embroidery on them.
Can you tell their style?
Well, they just used a lot of embroidery stitches, like the herringbone stitch and different ones that I had learned later. But I was amazed how they really liked to make them look really pretty.
Yeah, not just utility only.
No.
What of your memories of like the embroidery or the stitching do you see in your quilts? What do you think what specific thing inspired you that you might see in your quilts? Anything?
Yes, I guess copying and just remembering what they did. Yeah, they gave me lots of hints. Later years, I made a quilt, and wanted to embroidery on velvet, and I didn't know how to get the pattern on black velvet. And my mother told me to get a piece of tissue, draw the pattern on it, pin it to the quilt, and embroidery through it. When I got through, tear it off, and there it was.
Did you feel like that was just magic?
It was a miracle. Yeah, because it was easy, but you had to know what to do.
Yeah, and now there's these high-tech tissue transfer paper you can print from your computer, and like, so it really is a technology that started with very, simple means. And did you teach anyone else to quilt?
Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm.
I tried. I made kits for several people and tried to do it. But when I was teaching, I always had children that got through too quick. And I had little cubbies in my room, and I would cut them a little square and cut them a butterfly like I used to quilt with, and I would show them that stitch. And when they would get through their work, they could go get their butterfly and work on it while we were finished.
I am so jealous that I was not in that classroom.
Yeah, you weren't. You were in one, though. That was a long time ago.
And you taught 3rd grade or 2nd grade?
Well, a little of both. 3rd and a combination, 2nd, 3, and 4th. So they moved me around.
Yeah, at Mountain View Elementary, where I was lucky enough to be a student, one of your students. And the idea of starting kids on sewing at that age is really, it's great. Did you find that the kids were receptive to it?
Yes, we had a visiting artist as a quilter at school one time, and she wanted the classes to make a quilt for display. So we made, I let each one draw a section, and we put it together just with paper and hung it in the hall.
How cool.
And then another time I took a sheet and drew it in squares, and we were doing a project on Indians, and I let each one choose their own picture, and I would put it on a table, and they would go get magic markers and draw that. And I put the edge and rickrack around it, and I have that old quilt here.
Cool.
Yeah, but I always like to teach them something different.
Well, I think that makes a lot of sense, that your background in teaching, and I think of you as a lifelong learner. You're a very curious person about learning new things, and it shows up in your quilts.
Thank you.
Because we're just looking at one, but you're a very prolific quilter, and I think it's so interesting to think about your background as an educator and somebody who's really always learning something new now in their quilting. That's really neat.
Okay.
What is are there any techniques that you've never done that you wish that you're still, I wish I'd done that one, because you're not able to quilt right now, but are there any techniques you
wanted to learn to tat.
Oh.
But I learned to knit, I learned to crochet, I learned to make baskets. I did calligraphy, a class. In the summer, if I could get a class in something different, I would do it. I just always like to know what's going on.
Yeah, and push yourself.
Yeah.
Did you ever make things out of quilts other than quilts, like garments or other objects?
I didn't want to do that.
A lot of your quilts are on the wall of your home.
Yeah.
So do you consider your quilts art or craft, or how do you feel about them as pieces of art?
I just feel like they're things I enjoy, and I enjoy looking at them. So
you don't feel like you need to label it or
no.
see it. But you do put labels.
Yeah.
And you put significant labels on your quilts.
Yes.
How do you feel about, why do you label your quilts?
Well, I joined the guild here in Morganton, and they always had a show, and you had to have your label on your quilts every time you
So it was a
made
requirement.
one. Yeah, when you put them in. So I did it, and it's good because it puts the date, and you had to name them.
Mm-hmm. And you've made so many quilts that I would think you might forget what you named it if you didn't label
I did when you asked. I forgot this one.
And what other kind of record keeping do you do? Do you have like a notebook where you write down what you've made and how big it was, or any of that kind of journaling or note taking?
No, I had too many other things to do. But I did start a book about my family and took each member and started doing it in calligraphy. But I didn't get it finished, but I enjoyed doing that. Time just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
But I did use all my time as much as I could.
Yeah, you certainly have. And your husband was very artistic and good with his hands. Tell me about things that you collaborated on.
Everything.
Yeah.
We always did everything together. My younger daughter always mentioned, said, "Do you want me to come over and help you make the bed?" Because I remember Dad helping you make the bed every day before we went to school. But we did everything together.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. He was from New Jersey. So for a Southerner to marry a Yankee in Black Mountain, that was quite the talk of the town.
Brazen.
Yes, it was.
That comes to mind.
Yeah.
But I think it's so neat that his passion was woodworking. And is that right? And
well, first of all was sports.
Oh.
He was a baseball player and a football player, and he exercised. He was really into physical exercise. So,
and his woodworking led to I'm thinking about the stands that he made, the quilt stands that there are many of them around your home that are I think other quilters would just be so jealous of what he made for you to display your quilts in very clever ways. And I think that's neat to have had a partner who was as creative
we
as
did
you were.
everything together.
Yeah.
As I told you, we had a cabin, and we had some problems along the way, and if ever we had one that bothered us, we never would discuss it at the cabin. That was our happy place. We'd go up there and enjoy being together and then come home. But
a secret to marriage.
Yeah, we'd had our happy place.
Yeah.
And it was always happy, really.
Do you have quilts in that cabin too?
I do, but I don't have many of mine. I've got old quilts that I've acquired. People have given them to me, and I've bought some of them. But the most of them up there, I have a couple that I made, but I keep most of my ones I really like here.
Yeah.
I have a whole closet full you haven't even seen. You think you've seen a lot, but there's a stack about this big in there.
And I love that you have your quilts out. You have enjoyed them. They're in your home for you to see. And I don't know if that was special because I'm here or if you live with them out all the time.
I do.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about the guild. You've quilted all your life. You started quilting with your family. What made you want to join the guild? And that was when you retired, right?
Well, right before I retired, they always had a show at the Comma. And I would go and look at all their quilts and think, oh, I'd like to be in this group. So the minute that I retired, I went and joined and learned so much. They had teachers come, and I really liked it.
It's a great way to learn. And did
Oh.
you feel like you were also teaching other people through what you were doing? Because there's a show and tell at most meetings,
Yes,
right?
well, I gave several classes, and I went to Hickory and Marion and gave several shows and talked about my quilts.
Mhm. And Linda, your daughter said she's quilted.
Yeah.
Is she the only other person in your family who quilts?
Kathy, my other daughter, has started, but
Okay.
she doesn't state it like Linda does.
And what about some of the grandchildren?
No.
Not interested
No.
yet.
No.
Yet.
Things change.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They do. What about quilting what's the most exciting or sustaining part about it?
Just doing it.
Yeah.
I just had to every day.
Yeah.
I just couldn't not.
So it was a compulsion.
Yeah, I guess I am that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to get my fix with quilting. Yeah.
And when you were still quilting, where did you do your quilting in the house? Was it a separate room for it?
Downstairs.
Okay.
In my den.
So you use that, and tell us a little bit about how you quilt and what makes it, I think, unique. Like, what's your process when you do make a quilt?
Well, when I make a quilt, I first pick my fabrics. Then I get I usually like to do blocks, and I don't want them to be the same. And I use a light box and draw the pattern on the fabric for the background. And then I do mostly applique. So I cut the pieces. I use Love Batiks, and I take the pattern, cut the pieces, and then I iron them. I use freezer paper.
Okay.
And iron them on my fabric, spray them, and sew around them. And then I pin them to my background. So it's a little different method.
Yeah.
People do different ways, but that's the one that worked for me.
And then do you ever use the sewing machine for any of your pieces? So it's
I tried.
What did you like about it?
I don't like it because I like to hold the quilt in my hands. I just love the feel of it and the way but the machine just wasn't for me.
You said you heard the noise of it when your grandmother was winding bobbins. And
No, that was my friend.
Oh, your friend. Okay.
I had this friend that I loved that used to work in sewing, and I was sitting by her in a class, and I was determined. I bought a machine. I was determined I was going to learn how to use it. So I was sitting there going, and I heard this zoom, zoom, zoom. And I thought, my goodness, and I looked, but she was winding her bobbin. So I thought, that's it, I'm not going to quilt on this machine anymore.
So is part of it that it's quiet and it's peaceful and it's tactile?
Peaceful, and I just feel so good holding it in my lap and in my hand.
Yeah. And you said you don't use a frame or a hoop.
No.
You like just holding it.
No.
Yeah.
I just kind of pull it with my hand and make it a little taut.
Yeah. And you hand quilt too. So
Everything.
It's all hand done.
Everything.
What has the reaction been in the Guild with folks who see your work and have never hand-pieced and hand-made, hand-quilted a whole quilt? Are they like, I could never do that? Or what's the reaction?
They've been very receptive.
Do you think anyone has tried doing that just because they were inspired by you?
I don't know.
I wonder.
Most of them
It's
do.
inspiring to me.
Most of them do use machines.
Yeah. And now, like we were talking about earlier, people even send their quilt out to
Oh,
somebody else.
a lot of them are doing that now.
And
they're making their tops and then
Yeah.
they send them off. I couldn't let somebody have my quilt.
yeah, it's very personal for you,
It was,
I think, isn't
yeah,
it?
it is. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, you like the whole process start to finish.
Yeah,
Do you like binding?
I do.
Yeah. So there's no
You
part
have
of it.
to, you have to do it all.
Yeah.
So you just do certain
Yeah.
process.
When you were quilting, did you do one project all the way through, or did you have ones started and
They
work a
used
little?
to tease me so about that. I never did more than one at a time. And they would start 2 or 3, and they always laughed at me. But they said, well, she's not going to do anything till she gets that done. But I was committed to the one I was doing at
Yeah.
the time.
That was it allowed you to be very prolific. If we look at your results
Yeah.
and reflect back on your process.
But I did make sure they were finished, not
Yeah.
packed up, half done.
Yeah, I'm just amazed at how many quilts that you finished, and I think, my memory of you as a teacher is that you were very thorough and very efficient, and I think that I see that in your quilting,
Yeah.
I see that connection in how you approach things, how you approach your career, and how you
Well,
approach
I
your
never
quilts.
wanted to waste a day of a child's life. I
Yeah.
thought that would be so bad to
Oh,
go and not learn something one day.
That's a beautiful philosophy.
Yeah.
I would wish that for every educator working now, that they
Yeah.
would have that,
Yeah.
philosophy and
It's
have the
so
support.
different. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's different.
Do you have you seen quilting change since you've
It
been
has.
involved with
Yeah.
quilting?
The availability of patterns online. I mean, and ordering Linda orders material and
Yeah.
which was never available.
Had to go to the basement
Yeah.
of Belk's, didn't you?
Yeah, you just go different places.
Yeah.
I love to go to quilting shows. The fabrics just intrigue me.
It's so fun.
It is.
Have you seen any, do you think the changes that are happening with the computer, online communities, all the new gadgets and stuff, what do you think about those changes in quilting?
Well, I wouldn't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's just personal,
Mm-hmm.
just what somebody's willing to do.
Yeah. When you cut, for instance, do you use scissors or have you used a
I
rotary
use a
cutter?
rotary cutter.
Oh, you do?
But I had to learn that through
Yeah.
the Guild.
Yeah.
See, I learned a lot at the
Ah.
Guild. It was a wonderful experience for me.
Have there been things you learned that you never thought you would do in terms of technology or a tool or whatever?
Not that I wouldn't let myself. I'm so methodical
Yeah.
about my procedures that I
Yeah.
just kind of stick to what I know.
Yeah. But you're very open-minded in that you are always seeking something new. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm very impressed with how contemporary your quilts look and how timeless many of them. This one, for instance, it's just so contemporary and artful. And I think that's so interesting that no two quilts look alike here.
yeah.
And that seems like it's a part of the fun.
Yeah, it
for
is.
you.
If I see something that's unique, I
Yeah.
think I need to do.
Yeah. What do you think about quilting as it has to do with your family? Do you feel like it ties you to your ancestors, your relatives, in that your love for making quilts?
Especially my grandmother and my mother.
Yeah.
We were very, very close.
Mm.
Yeah.
And what do you think? What does it say? What do you think it says about American life quilts? Do you ever think about them as being something that is a symbol in, you know, our culture. Your grandmother used reused
Yeah.
and reused.
Yeah.
And we have a lot more choices.
Yeah.
So is it at all, do you think of quilts as in symbol, you know, in sort of the meaning of them in that way, that they were being resourceful? It's a sort of symbol of resourcefulness.
Yeah, I think that's where you get the uniqueness of people using what they have.
Yeah.
Just think, oh, I can use that. I'm always a saver of boxes and things because I always want to make something out of them. It's just you see something and you want to use it.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about just quilts some people consider their quilts art, fine art, just like a painting. Others consider it a cover for sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think of yours as somewhere in between, that they're a little bit of both?
They're a little of both.
Yeah. What do you think your grandmother and your mother would have said about their quilts?
Necessity.
Yeah.
They were very heavy.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they took pride in their quilts, though? Because, yeah. And it's a generational thing, too, isn't it, about how people share what they do, their handwork, things that they made. What about, there's a question here about quilts having special meaning for women's history. If we look at a history museum and quilts are included there, what do you think is that interesting to you when you go to a museum? Are you looking for textiles and quilts to see what women were doing?
Yeah. I think women had to work so hard a long time ago. They needed some way to express themselves, some way. And that's where it comes out. They show their uniqueness in making something.
And probably was a joy to be able to work on something that was
something not
giving you back.
Hard work. Yeah.
And filling you up. With color.
That's right.
Because you love color, I can see that.
I do.
And you love purple.
I do love purple.
It's so beautiful.
I do.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I've just got a couple more questions. You have a quilt that's in a frame, like it's mounted in a frame with glass behind it.
Yes.
Is it important to you what happens to your quilts when you are gone?
It is. I hope people enjoy them and share them that I couldn't.
Yeah.
But I hope they'll be preserved. I'm sure my daughter Linda loves them all, and she'll see to that.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to talk about?
I can't think of anything right now.
I've
enjoyed showing them to you.
Oh, I've enjoyed seeing them.
Yeah, it's been really nice to share them with you.
Well, I think that's what this project is all about, is passing down that, not only the objects, the photos, but what you thought about it on this day in history, what you thought about quilting. You know, it's a very important conversation to the collection, so I thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You made my day.
Aww.
I've enjoyed.
This is your birthday present to me.
Yes, thank you.
Nice. Oh, that was